9 public institutions connected. In addition, the output target to connect 8 health facilities was met and exceeded, with 18 health facilities connected. Further, the output to connect 2 local authorities to the GUAN was also met, and this was on account of availability of funds. With regard to the provision of electronic services, a total of 9 institutions providing electronic services on government service bus exceeded the target by 3. The output target to bring on board 100 electronic services on the GSB was above target, with 118 electronic services brought onto the GSB. The output target to develop 45 strategic plans by ministries, spending agencies were all met as earlier advised, and a total of 2 restructured institutions underwent change management on organizational development against the target of 4. These were the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, as well as the Minor Soko Military Hospital. The output target to develop service delivery charters for 10 local authorities was met, as all the targeted service delivery charters were developed. The performance was attributed to compliance by local authorities with the process. The output target to develop 104 annual performance contracts for permanent secretaries and senior management staff was partially met, as 84 annual contracts were developed. This is an improvement from the 56 contracts that were developed in 2021. With regards public infrastructure maintenance, the output target to upgrade 10 infrastructure to accommodate differently abled persons was not met, as only 1 public building was upgraded in Lusaka. This performance was attributed to limitations in the new procurement system, such as the introduction of the price market index, which cannot be used when building up rates for construction. As regards strategy number 6, with respect to land management and administration, the output target to issue 250,000 systematic certificates of title was not met, as only 47,000 titles were issued. This was because of the following reasons: encumbrances due to pre-existing titles and surveys on land occupied by informal settlers, councils issuing occupancy licenses, and failure by landowners to pay license fees. The output targets to issue 18,000 sporadic certificates of title was above target, as 22,000 certificates were issued. The output to fully operationalize 2 provincial offices was partially met, as 1 office was fully operationalized. The output target to make 19 automated land services available online was met, above target, as 51 automated services were made available online. The output target to ensure that 50% of women are owning land was not met, as only 24.8% of women own land. This was attributed to inadequate awareness, as well as other socio-economic and cultural factors. The output target to ensure that 50% of youth were owning land could not be assessed, as data capturing tools in the ZILMIS did not segregate data to the extent of filtering the youth. On the other hand, the output targets for 50% of persons with disabilities owning land and to have 50% of youths owning land could not be assessed for similar reasons. The output target to develop 1 land management information system was met due to timely development and deployment of the IT system. The output target to reaffirm the 2 international boundaries was met on account of the availability of resources and collaboration between Zambia and her neighboring countries. Under the development outcome number 2, which relates to improved rule of law, human rights, and constitutionalism, the output target to review pieces of legislation to enhance constitutional reform were concluded. The output to establish 1 national mechanism for implementation, reporting, and follow-up was met, as cabinet approval was granted, and it was subsequently launched. The output target to investigate and conduct 60% of cases of human rights violation was met, as 60.5% of the cases were investigated and concluded. This was due to temporary opening of new offices in Muchinga, Luapula, and northwestern provinces. The output target to submit 2 state party reports on human rights mechanisms was met due to support from stakeholders through information submitted. This is the Universal Periodic Review, as well as the ICCPR. The output target to consider 60% of cases of misconduct against judicial officers was met at 60.2%, as 60.2% of cases were considered. This was due to consistency in the commission meeting to consider the cases before them. The output target to have 5 functional legal aid district officers was met due to allocation of additional funds. The output target to decentralize 5 Attorney General's Chambers offices in the provinces was carried out due to sufficient disbursement of funding. The output target to have 4 ACC offices opened in selected districts was not met because office accommodation in identified areas was yet to be secured at the time. The output target to investigate 80% of reported corruption cases was not met, as only 68% of reported corruption cases were investigated. The output target to conclude 41% of investigated corruption cases was not met, as only 18% of investigated corruption cases were concluded. The performance was attributed to high staff turnover due to resignations. The target to have 75% of prosecuted corruption cases that led to conviction was exceeded, as 82% of such cases led to convictions. The output target to have 75% of the value of proceeds of crimes was met, as a total of 46 million. This was enabled by the joint operations law enforcement agencies. The output target to conclude 57% of investigated money laundering cases was not met, as only 46% of the cases were concluded. This performance was attributed to inadequate collaboration with other law enforcement agencies. The target to have 7 circuit courts at Supreme Court was not met, as only 1 was conducted. The target to have 3 circuit courts was partially met, as only 2 constitutional circuit courts were conducted. The targets were not met at the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court due to few cases filed, and not all Gazette circuits were held. The few cases filed were heard in Lusaka during the ordinary sessions. The target to conduct 5 circuit courts at Court of Appeal was met due to availability of adjudicators and other resources. The output target to have 300 lawyers admitted to the bar per year was partially met, as 289 lawyers were admitted. The performance was attributed to the introduction of full-time class sessions. The output target to conclude 45% of investigated maladministration cases were not met, as only 21 of the cases were concluded, and this was on account of understaffing. The target to decentralize 2 parole boards in 2 provinces was not met, and this was attributed to the delayed appointment of members of the National Parole Board. What are the lessons to be learned from our performance in 2022? Enhanced collaboration with civil society organizations leads to timely dissemination of information on Constituency Development Fund under decentralization programs. Secondly, timely funding from cooperating development partners and government leads to effective implementation of programs. Delayed approval of implementation plans leads to uncertainties of targets to report on by implementing institutions. Low capacities in monitoring and evaluation gives unrealistic program performance under the 8th National Development Plan, and the setting of unrealistic targets give an impression of underperformance of the cluster. Some of the recommendations that we have identified is that we need to have a combined capacity building between civil society organizations and government officials in order to explore ways of collaboration for enhanced management of the 8th National Development Plan. And this is coming from the basis that we have co-chairs for each cluster under the 8th National Development Plan, and the other co-chair comes from the private sector. Secondly, there's need to conduct refresher courses on monitoring and evaluation in order to improve reporting on the implementation of sector programs. And last but not the least is to explore alternative funding from cooperating partners for the 8th National Development Programs in the event that programs experience inadequate funding. I thank you, Chair.
All right. Yes, thank you for the submission, honorable members. Any questions? Any questions? The lights. Yes, honorable Anakwak.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've got 2 points of clarification. The first one is probably a bit of a general one. I just want to find out, PS, there are a number of targets here that seem to have been set rather arbitrarily. In other words, there isn't a systematic structure that speaks to the achievement of those targets. And I can cite 2 or so. There is one to do with youth involvement in decision making. And youths can't just be planted in decision making. There is a process that brings them. So how did we come up with a target What is it that we thought we were going to change to give us that target of youth in decision making? There's one to do with audit of 100% of expenditure, which you said couldn't be achieved because the budget for auditing was not sufficient. Now, if actually in the budget we can't make sufficient provision, why did we even set that we can audit 100% of the expenditure? Maybe the last one I would mention is the output target of implementing IFMIS in 58 local authorities. And the cost of IFMIS license packages was known all the way from the, even as we were setting this as a target. So I'm just giving, and it's applicable to a number of them. Do you think there is need to revisit what informs the setting of these targets going forward? The second one, Chair, is one of the things that comes to mind whenever we are talking about governance, and especially when it's the Minister of Justice you are interacting with, is police and the policing procedures. I haven't seen anywhere where we are talking about reviewing the police curriculum. We've heard in the past that the police requires training or retraining in order to deal with issues of human rights. Is it your view that the curriculum is just okay, but something goes wrong when these officers get to be deployed? And here I want to be very specific so that you see what I'm thinking about. Why do we still have a situation where it is normal for a police officer to slap a suspect? Not too long ago, we even had police officers going on TV with whips, saying, when enforcing COVID, I'm going to whip you. What is it that we need to change? Is it the rules? Is it the regulations? Is it the training in order to have that as a thing of the past? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. PS, you can respond to those two questions.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Honorable Member, your questions are well noted. In terms of the setting of the targets, there is a system and there are expectations as is had in any planning processes. But as I have indicated, and I think you've also noted, I think we were a bit unrealistic, and those are one of the issues that we mentioned even in our presentation. And as on account of that, it has led to us appearing to have an underperformance. At the time, of course, the targets are set, and there's a mechanism that is explained in our implementation plan of how we're going to achieve this. But I think as we are rolling out along the way, you begin to meet snags and you realize that probably you need to rethink the mechanisms that you had put in place to try and achieve some of these targets. And that's why, Chair, we've actually indicated that we need to have refresher courses on monitoring and evaluation so that even as we're looking at the subsequent national development plans, we are more realistic with the targets that we place, because clearly this is showing an underperformance. And so that is well noted. I think that responds to question number 2 and 3, the 100% expenditure. Of course, the expectations of funding, that particular funding is not coming in. There's also the expectation that you get money at a particular time, but we know that our cooperating partners have got different budgeting processes from ours. So because of that overlap, we realize that we don't get the funding as and when it is required. So then we have a spillover to the subsequent years. But this is something that we have noted, and it's something that we're working on, and we continue to learn from the challenges we've had in the previous year. In terms of reviewing of the curriculum of the police, as you note, one of the constitutional reforms that we're undertaking is the review of the Public Order Act. That review is also going to entail capacity building for the police, and it is envisaged that the curriculum as well will have to conform with the new provisions of the law. And Chair, I know this is an ongoing process. A lot of cooperating partners tend to support this particular aspect that the honorable member has well noted, and so it's not cast in concrete. It's something that is available to be reviewed and to be enhanced and to allow or to avoid rather the abuse of authority by police officers. I think a number of initiatives have been undertaken to try and deal with these behaviors. I wouldn't say it's why, I wouldn't be able to indicate why they do what they do. The law is very clear. I think the Criminal Procedure Code gives processes on how people should be dealt with. And so it's on an individual basis. I don't think it's something that is considered as a culture of an institution, but it's on a case-by-case basis. But it's well noted, and the curriculum is something that should subsequently be reviewed based on the review of the Public Order Act, as well as even the electoral reforms, because there are a number of issues that also arise during elections with respect to our law enforcement agencies. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will take the last round of questions. We start with my Vice Chair.
Sorry, Chair. Before the next round comes, my counterpart, my
there's
team
sorry,
would like to,
okay,
to
please,
add
you
a
can
voice.
supplement.
Sorry, Chair.
No, it's fine.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to provide a practical example.
Your mic, you can switch on. Okay.
I wanted to provide an example of some of the things that we're trying to do in terms of trying to ensure that the police address issues of human rights as they attend to their line of work. So, sir, I think after the pandemic, we received support from the United Nations Development Program as well as GIZ, where they helped us to provide what we are calling standard operating procedures for policing during the pandemic environment. So we did develop these documents, and we went to all the provinces, and we had orientations in terms of what they are trying to do to address issues of human rights violations. So this is one of the things that we made as an effort to sensitize them in terms of what are their duties as duty bearers in terms of protecting the rights of human citizens. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Another reaction? No, I don't see any. Okay, so we'll take the last round. My vice will start, then followed by Honorable Menyan Zulu, and then Honorable Samakai, in that order. Is that a reaction, Honorable Hanakoka? Okay, so what we do is after they have asked, then you do the follow-up, then we'll close. Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is on civic education. Civic education is extremely important. Looking at an output target to reach 100,000 people is a drop in the ocean. If you look at the current population statistics of Zambia, which probably stands at 20 million, 100,000 people province-wise is 10,000 people per province. If we look at the entire population, we're only looking at 0.5. With such figures, are we going to achieve the desired results? Because it seems as much as funds are going in, we are not achieving what should be achieved, because 0.5% of the population is nothing. So we will always lag behind when it comes to civic education. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Zulu?
Yes.
Your mic?
The issue of 30% of youth representation in national matters, I think has been there. So I remember since when I was 30 years, that is 20 years ago, and we are still singing on the same song. And practically, you as a permanent secretary in this ministry, how do you think we can fast track this so that we have this representation at all levels, at the district level, constituency level, even at parliament, so that we can have the 30% representation as PS for the ministry? Then again, if you look at your target output for local courts to be built was not met. One, because of procurement process. The procurement process was still the procurement process to engage a contractor was still in progress. If you check a good number of projects in this country, I read through this process, and this process
this is my thinking. This process has derailed this country from moving forward because of the act itself. As PS, when you look at that act, what do you think about it? In case of emergency, an emergency happens today, to do a procurement which will take 3 months, do you call that an emergency? Then if you look at that as PS, at that act, what do you think about it? What can be done about that act? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Samakai. Your mic.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just have two small questions. One, you have bemoaned the issue of limitations on data as a failure to implement the local government equalization fund, and this limitation of data is on certain variables. Would you mind sharing those variables with the committee? That is one question. The other one is you mentioned that you were supposed to undertake a program on reaffirming the international boundaries of maybe with two countries. Which are those two countries we wish to know?
Thank you. Honorable Nakoka, you can do the follow-up.
Thank you, Chair. My quick follow-up, PS, is on a specific issue to do with police operations. Do we have a system that supplies us with information on a regular basis? And maybe to be clear, let me use an example. For example, every day police stations admit people and they also release people. Do we have a system where districts are reporting centrally how many people they arrested and when they were released, or if they are still being processed? Basically, that gives you that statistics. And I'm asking this question, realizing that whilst we have a presidential pronouncement, basically, don't keep anyone overnight who can get bond. One notes that, especially outside the line of rail, where there are no prying eyes of who is being kept for how long, we could lose basically that same good deliverable if we don't have a way of monitoring it. So do we have a system that gives us this information so that we can see whether there is an improvement nationally or otherwise? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. PS, you can respond to those and then we'll close.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable member that referred to civic education. Indeed, 100,000 looks like a drop in the ocean, but I think it is also based on the financial outlay that is available. But suffice to say that this was for the year 2022, so it's staggered over a 5-year period. Whether they're sufficient or not is a question that we'll need to address as we are reviewing the performance of the 8th National Development Plan. But I think I would generally wish to note the concern. Suffice to say that this is not for the whole period, but it's continuous. We have figures under the implementation plan for each year. But I think the concern is well noted. Considering the population and the number of people that we need to reach out to, we definitely need to step up their game, and so we take heed of that advice. With respect to the 30% representation of the youth, I'll call upon my colleague to respond to that particular one.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of practices that perhaps we could learn from. For instance, in Kenya, they have what they're calling affirmative action for targeted groups such as the youths, women, and persons with disabilities. For instance, you'd find under their procurement processes, if I could use that as an example, they've ensured that for all works that are supposed to be done, whether it's for procurement for goods, works, and services, there is a ceiling in terms of how much should go to enterprises that are youth-owned, for instance, enterprises that are women-owned. So we need to see how we can introduce affirmative action as it relates to participation in procurement, government procurement. And then they've also extended it further to where they've ensured that political parties are also able to mainstream issues of youth representation and youth participation. So that is something that needs to be explored and looked into. And then with countries such as South Africa, I think they've introduced mixed member proportional representation. And as a country, we're trying to see how best we could be able to adopt such a model to ensure that these targeted citizens are able to participate in that respect. P.S., I don't know whether I could try and speak to the question that was highlighted regarding do we have a system of monitoring how many persons are incarcerated or are detained under the police facilities. What I would like to indicate is that currently we have a paper-based record management system that is being done under the criminal justice system. But what we need to do is to have an automated, integrated system where we're able to get this information at real time. So we are currently in discussions with the judiciary, Zambia Police, Zambia Correctional Services, as well as Human Rights Commission to try and see how we could develop an integrated case flow management system. Countries such as Zimbabwe, Rwanda have developed and deployed this system, so we're trying to see how we could have an automated system where we're able to provide and look at this information in real time. Apart from that, we also have what is known as the Triple CI initiative, which has to do with communication, cooperation, and coordination initiative among the criminal justice institutions. So this is a system that has been set up where they go and look at the records under the police system to try and see where are the delays and how can they expedite to see that some of these cases are actually attended to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for your indulgence. With respect to the question relating to delays in the procurement of construction, especially under the judicial sector, I think the honourable member talked about local court delays and the delay in construction of local courts on account of procurement processes. Chair, as the honourable members will note, this is something that has been identified even at the highest level, and we are currently reviewing the Public Procurement Act to try and streamline the processes, to decentralize and codify that, and also to further buttress or enhance local citizen participation. So this is something that is underway. It's something that's not only noted in the judicial sector, it's cross-cutting in the road sector, in the health sector. It's something that is a very thorny issue, and so our solution to this is the proposed amendment, which we're hoping the honourable members will support once it comes to the House. With respect to the variables, I must say the pitfalls of being chair is that you are given so much information, some of which you don't even understand. So we don't have clear information on what variables these are, but with the indulgence of the chair, we could get this information and submit it to the committee through the Office of the Clerk of the National Assembly, if that's acceptable, to avoid us fishing.
Okay. So we are sitting up to Thursday next week.
Okay.
If you can submit it within this period, that will be okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yet again, even as I move on to the next one, on the international boundaries, as Ministry of Justice, I am confident of Congo, but I'm not very sure whether Malawi is the second country. So yet again, we'll need to confirm that statistic. But Congo is, I'm very sure of, because we've had representatives on the committee with the Ministry of Land, Surveyor General team, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. With respect to the case flow management system, I think that has been mentioned. Suffice to say that we recently had the launch of the Public Infrastructure and Expenditure Report on the judicial sector. And this is a report that highlighted quite a number of inefficiencies in the judicial system, which has gone to affect access to information. So that is a piece of that is a report that has highlighted quite a number of things that we have to respond to as government to try and also enhance the case flow management system that he has talked about. So it has recognized where the pitfalls are. It has recognized that there are no synergies amongst the judicial institutions. It has recognized the potential delays that are actually experienced. and how you have certain juveniles sitting in facilities for longer than expected, because maybe it's just the delay of the submission of a document to the police station to move that person to the requisite facility. So this is one report which is also very, I think, useful in terms of providing where we are and where we need to go, which I believe, as we are presenting on the two issues, we can also give the committee a copy just for your information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, this is where we end with our colleagues from the Ministry of Justice. PS and your team, thank you very much for appearing before this committee. Your information you've given us is quite valuable, and it will help us as we do conclude our work as we submit this report to our colleagues in the Parliament of Zambia, and that will help us going forward as we do the follow-up reviews coming forward up to 2026. I mean, this is the first of the reviews, so the information that we are collecting now will help us a lot going forward. In terms of the provision of the Immunity Cap 12, also we end here. We are very sure and aware that we have a lot of other immunities we are enjoying. So you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members. Good day.
Thank you.
Parliament is open to members of the general public who may wish to undertake familiarization tours of Parliament buildings, either in groups or as individuals, or to attend sittings of the House or parliamentary committees. All those wishing to visit Parliament can either write to the Clerk of the National Assembly or simply come to Parliament buildings. Upon arrival at Parliament buildings, visitors are required to identify themselves. A passport or national registration card is required for identification purposes. Those to whom permission is granted to sit in the visitors' galleries will be ushered to the appropriate galleries by protocol officers. Before gaining access to the galleries, all visitors will be issued with passes by the Security Department at the Media and Visitors Center. All visitors to parliamentary premises are required to wear smart attire, either office or casual wear. Furthermore, visitors are not allowed to take with them into the galleries such articles as walking sticks, umbrellas, briefcases, or parcels of any type, newspapers, magazines, or cellular phones. All such articles must be deposited at the reception desk. Visitors to the galleries are given copies of the order paper, which shows the order in which the business for that particular day would be taken.
Okay, honorable members, we now have our colleagues from Action Aid, being led by I want to believe, the country director. Colleagues from Action Aid, good morning and you're welcome. Thank you very much. What we'll do is let's start with the introductions. So we'll allow you, country director, to lead in the introductions of your members, and then we'll allow the members of this committee to do the same, and the members of staff, then we'll start. Okay, we can start.
Good morning to you all honorable members. I am Andrew Chikore, the interim country director for Action Aid Zambia. With me is a delegation that is coming before you to make our submission. And if you would allow me, I would ask them to self-introduce, starting from my right.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Emmanuel Ngoma. I'm the Fisheries Work Officer at Action Aid Zambia.
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Chitindi, and I'm the National Endowment for Democracy Project Officer for Action Aid Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Samantha Munangandu. Good morning. I'm Samantha Munangandu.
Okay.
I'm the Rice Project Officer at Action Aid Zambia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Mwambazi. I'm the Climate Justice Officer at Action Aid Zambia. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Bob Sianjarika. I'm the Communications Officer at Action Aid Zambia.
Thank you. Samantha, you hear why members were murmuring as we introduce ourselves. So let's start with introductions. One of members, starting with Honorable Menyanizolo.
Good morning, Action Aid. I'm Menyanizolo, Member of Parliament for Nyimba constituency in the Eastern Province. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Dr. Kalila, Member of Parliament for Lukulu, Western Province. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Asbongile Mwamba, Member of Parliament for Kasama Central Constituency. You're most welcome.
Morning, Samaka Newton, Mwenelonga constituency.
Good morning. My name is Muvita Anakoka, Member of Parliament for Luena constituency in Western Province.
I'm Member of Parliament for the people of Chama South constituency in Eastern Province. Mungandu Davison is my name. Good morning.
That's the reason.
I'm different from my noisy neighbor here. My name is Brian Kambita, Member of Parliament for Zambezi East constituency in Northwestern Province.
Honorable Chair, thank you so much, and good morning. My name is Mtotweka Fuaya, MP for Lunde.
Thank you. Members of staff?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, witnesses. My name is Leon Hangala from the Office of the Clerk.
Okay, thank you. And my name is Fred Jatila, Member of Parliament for Momba constituency in Monze, also the chairperson for this select committee. Action Aid, we are doing a review on the 2022 annual report on the 8th National Development Plan, and we value the inputs of the stakeholders such as yourselves. So we are grateful that you found time to appear before this committee, that which was constituted by Madam Speaker, to undertake this assignment. So Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia gives you immunity as and when you appear before a committee of parliament such as this one, meaning that you have full immunity we are now conferring on you as a committee, meaning that whatever you say whilst appearing before this committee, that which you say cannot be used against you in any court of law. However, the same provision works against you in an event that you were to deliberately mislead the committee, then you will revoke the immunity even after when you have gone. So we will give you, say, if you need all of it, say 25 minutes maximum for you to take us through your submission, and maybe another 15 minutes for members to ask questions, if at all they will have any, and then we'll close. So you can start as and when you are ready, sir, with your team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and all the members of Parliament here present. We are happy to be here this morning as Action Aid, and to start us off, I'll briefly speak about Action Aid as an organization and the linkages that it brings to the subject matter that has brought us here today. So Action Aid is a national organization working to end poverty and injustice in Zambia. And we are a member of the International Federation, which works across 44 countries across the globe. Speaking specifically to ActionAid Zambia, our focus is mainly on climate justice and environmental sustainability, civic participation and state accountability, and lastly, transformative youth-led engagement. But key to our work is our focus on gender-responsive public services, and this is the core reason why we are here today to share with you our submissions that we have. Our vision is to ensure a just, equitable and sustainable Zambia, where every Zambian enjoys a life of dignity, and our mission focuses on the need to achieve social justice, gender equality and eradication of poverty, looking at the marginalized communities from where we work in. It is also important for us to then appreciate the marginalized communities that ActionAid Zambia is currently working in, and happy to say that as we engage in our work, we work with various stakeholders, inclusive of government institutions, vulnerable women and youth groups, other civil society organizations, government agencies, just to mention a few. In terms of our locations of work, we are currently working in Nalolo, Sesheke, Mpulungu, Mbala, Chipata, Luangwa, Kafue, and Nakonde. I hope this will help us as we juxtapose the deliberations that we are undertaking today as part of our submissions. Lastly, our aim of our submission, as has been requested, is to submit to Parliament on the review of the 2022 annual progress on the implementation of the 8th National Development Plan. The current National Development Plan focuses on 4 strategic development areas which have interlinked with a view to spur socio-economic transformation for improved livelihoods. Therefore, the report's aim of this submission is to review the implementation as such. As has been requested, our focus will be on Development Outcome 3, on improved water and sanitation, with the supporting review Strategy 1, which focuses on improved access to clean and safe water supply, as well as Strategy 2, improve sanitation service. Also, we'll focus on Development Outcome 4, on poverty and vulnerability reduction, with Strategy 1 focusing on improved social protection and programs. And lastly, Strategy Review 2 focusing on enhancing welfare and livelihoods for poor and vulnerable people. And of course, the last one, strategy for increasing access to decent and affordable housing. Lastly, let me say the submissions highlights observations made by ActionAid based on the key gaps observed on the matters that have been raised in the report and provides key recommendations raised in the 2022 Annual Progress Report. The analysis of the annual report will begin by giving a brief context of the water and sanitation issues and poverty and vulnerability issues as well. So allow me also to end by saying the submissions that we are bringing to the August House are based on our internal observations and interactions with different stakeholders. They may be not conclusive, but they are important in steering discussions that will help us as recommendations for planning and consideration by the August House. Thank you very much. So at this juncture, I will allow Emmanuel to lead us in this process, bearing in mind that we are cognizant of the time that has been allocated to ActionAid. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'll begin by giving a brief overview of the water and sanitation sector so that we understand how the implementation of different strategies is really impacting the sector. So based on the 2018 Zambia Demographic Health and Survey, so we noticed that 71% of the general population had access to improved drinking water sources. And in terms of performance, am I speaking too fast? Okay.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm okay, all right. So in terms of the performance, we noticed that in terms of urban areas, it outperformed the rural areas in that 91% had access and some 50% had access in the rural areas. When we talk about improved sanitation services, so we noticed that the population, at least about 54%, had use of improved sanitation services. And urban areas, we noticed that 79% had access to those sanitation services, and in rural areas it was low, meaning it was about 38%. And then when we talk about basic hand washing services, we noticed that it was accessible only 24% of the population, that is 36% in urban areas and 15% in rural areas. And when it comes to the issues of urban open defecation, we noticed that at least in rural areas 16%, and then in urban areas with 1% where we had incidences of open defecation. So basically, so this shows that the sanitation sector really needs to be funded. So, but when we look at in terms of budgetary allocation, you notice that the UNICEF budget brief that was produced in 2023 showed that there was a downward trend in terms of budget allocation towards sanitation services, which is not supposed to be the case, but we need increased budget allocation towards the sanitation services. So now I'll move to show how we performed when it comes to the strategy number 1 on improved sanitation services. Based on the report, we noticed that government performed very well. They exceeded expectations. They drilled a number of boreholes. They rehabilitated boreholes, surpassing their targets. But then one thing that we notice is that if you look at other stakeholder reports, for example, if you look at the report by UNICEF, you will notice that the numbers kind of differ from the ones that in the report. For example, the government indicated that they drilled 2,169 boreholes against 3,209, but the report, the same budget brief that was produced in 2023 by UNICEF, will indicate that only 638 boreholes were drilled, so that means 20% of the target was reached. And then when it comes to the rehabilitation, the government indicated they rehabilitated 2,905 in the report, but then UNICEF also reported that they drilled 300 boreholes. So we can see a little bit of a mismatch there, which just implies that we need to collaborate more with the other stakeholders in terms of monitoring these projects, so that when we are producing reports that are really speaking to each other. So there is need to collaborate in terms of monitoring. And then still on the same issue of boreholes and drilling, we still mention that there is need for us to invest more into maintenance of the same, which brings me to another point where still in strategy 1, improve access to clean and safe water. The report indicated that 10 SOMAP shops were not equipped. and this was the target. So if this is not done, then it creates a situation where people in rural areas do not have access to shops where they can get equipment that they need for their hand pumps or to fix their hand pumps. So basically here, we need to create an enabling environment where people can invest in such shops that people in rural areas can have access to cheaper hand pumps as well as equipment that they can use to repair those hand pumps. So if we do that, then it will enable us to have provide access to clean and safe water in the rural areas. That way we can reduce on unpaid care work by women who work long distances just to access water. And then we're talking about improving sanitation services. Again, here it indicates government really performed very well. They surpassed their expectations. That is, they constructed inclusive waterborne sanitation facilities, at least 118, which is surpassed their target. And then it also they surpassed their target when it comes to expanding the sewer line. They did about 141 kilometers, and then most households were connected to the sewer line. So it is very commendable that the government is really exceeding the targets. But then if we look at the waterborne toilets, again, it's more like we're moving away from the VIP toilets. It is commendable because we have to move with times. But then moving to the waterborne comes with the cost implications. So that means we still need more funding towards sanitation so that we can also cater for the issues that have to do with cost of maintenance of those facilities. And then if we have to increase access to other areas in the rural areas, we can still maintain the VIP toilets so that we cover more areas, considering that the waterborne ones can be quite expensive. So from here, I'll hand over to my colleague who will give a brief overview of the social protection programs as well as our reviews. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Emmanuel. So I'll just briefly talk about the overview of the social protection programs and some of our findings. Of course, we note that the social protection program in Zambia has significantly grown due to the National Social Protection Policy Framework. And then we note as ActionAid Zambia that government has put in place measures aimed at enhancing social safety nets among vulnerable communities anchored on legal frameworks and policies to guide the implementation of these programs. So we're also aware that despite Zambia's economic growth and it being reclassified as a lower medium country, the country itself, Zambia, a large proportion of the country remains in poverty. So, of course, statistics reveal that 60% of the Zambian population located in rural areas continue to live below the poverty line. So when you look at outcome number 4 on poverty and vulnerability, we'll note that the allocation of social protection has normally increased by nearly 1/3. So it is commendable that the performance of the social cash transfer exceeded expectations by going beyond the 68% set as a target. So social cash transfer programs are key in addressing vulnerability, especially in rural areas. So we also commend the government that we have the 3 social security laws that were also reviewed. And then also on the disability services, we have the target to provide grants of 15 disability institutions was achieved as those particular institutions were provided with grants. So the target to have 5 ministries, provinces, and other spending agencies with disability focal point persons was achieved, as those 15 ministries and provinces had active disability focal point persons. So we do commend the government on that. However, we noted some gaps in this particular area, which being the allocation of the social protection funds itself falls short of the social safety net average expenditure of 1.5% for sub-Saharan Africa. meaning that the grant itself, in as much as it may have increased, is still below the sub-Saharan safety net for allocation. And then also, there has been a nationally representative survey since the 2015 Living Conditions Monitoring Survey to gauge poverty levels and determine if these interventions are making any meaningful impact. There has not been any such survey since 2015, so it's hard to trace if these interventions that government is putting and many others are making meaningful impact. And then also the other gap that was noted is that there has been failure for government to achieve its targets in the public welfare assistance due to inadequate funding. And then also something that we noted as well was the failure to ascertain the number of people living with disabilities, persons living with disabilities, provided with social assistance due to unavailability of data on this particular indicator. So some of the things that we recommend is that the government needs to explore more financing options such as domestic resource mobilization by ensuring that the multinational corporations pay their fair share of tax through public-private partnerships. And then also another recommendation is that the government, through the Zambia Statistics Agency, needs to conduct more frequent and regular household surveys, such as the Living Conditions Monitoring Survey, which will help determine in a timely fashion if interventions put in place are achieving the intended results and the actual financing needs required. Also, another recommendation is that there is need for transparency of the social cash transfer by use of ICT, information communication and technology, to identify the beneficiaries and promote efficiency in the implementation of the scheme. So furthermore on recommendations, the government must consider domesticating the regional budgetary allocation for, I beg your pardon? The government must consider domesticating the regional budgetary allocation set for sub-Saharan Africa at 1.5% of the national budget. It must also continue the current positive trend of increased resource allocation to social protection, ensuring program expansion to cover pregnant women, infants, school-going children, persons with disabilities and youth. Another recommendation that we had as ActionAid is that the Ministry of Community Development and Social Services should be part of the reporting team to provide data related on people with disabilities programs and initiatives being carried out to have a comprehensive reporting on this strategy and whether we are meeting the needs of people with disabilities. I'll just leave it to my colleague, Samantha, who will carry through.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm simply going to just make a summary of the recommendations that have been given. To start with, the 2022 annual progress report was formulated based on the interim performance targets proposed and endorsed by various 8 national development plan clusters as the approval of the implementation plans by the National Development Coordinating Committee was being awaited, and therefore it is recommended that the plan should always come with the implementation plan as it contains performance targets to the actual implementations. Then the next one, the annual progress report should accompany the interim performance targets proposed and endorsed by the various 8 national development plan clusters for references on the report. And then as ActionAid Zambia, we understand that the achievement of the set goals in the national plan require huge financial resources, and as such, we wish to recommend to this August House that government needs to put in place measures that will ensure improved mechanism to mobilize financial resources both internationally and domestically. Furthermore, government should revisit some of the tax incentives given to the mining companies to ensure that as a country we raise the revenue to progressively spend on social sectors such as the agriculture, health, education, and water by way of ensuring that mining companies pay their fair share of taxes. And last but not the least, we also wish to recommend that government needs to put in place the monitoring and evaluation system that we help monitor and track the progress that are being made based on the accurate date for improved programming of the 8th National Development Plan. I just hand over to my other colleague, Rebecca, for a final conclusion.
Thank you very much. Having everything been said, I would like to say that we commend the government for the work that they have done so far. It's really commendable, and we hope that these recommendations that we have presented before this House today will be able to be utilized so that we will be able to reach as many vulnerable people as possible to benefit from the services that the government is offering. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Taking the liberty of the time that we have, I think just to conclude, I would just emphasize probably on one or two issues that are of importance. Our submission really shows that with regards water and sanitation and the social protection programs, the government has done well as per plan, and this is quite commendable. So ActionAid is coming also from a background where we value the participation of citizens in decision making, as well as ensuring the use of public resources to provide the much needed services. So this speaks to the issue around having a monitoring and evaluation system that could be more robust, as this would help with statistics and figures that will help us to see the impact of our work, as well as to allocate the resources that are required to support the work we are talking about. And the second point really I'll re-emphasize is on the opportunities that we have as a government to raise more resources to support public service delivery, which we believe has to be gendered. The needs of women and men are different. The needs of boys and girls are different as we provide water and sanitation and social protection initiatives. But important to note is the need then to consider the over-taxation that fellow citizens may find themselves in an effort to access some of the services which may be not provided. For instance, more emphasis on value-added tax is a burden that falls on citizens directly and any other levies that may be there. But we see a lot of opportunities through the multinational companies and investors that are coming here in Zambia, which we believe that if they pay their fair share of tax, this is what we refer to as progressive taxation. and possibly the government reduce on the amount of incentives that are given to these companies, we believe that the government will be able to at least improve the budgetary allocations to the subject matter that we are discussing here today. Otherwise, we will leave it here and thank the honorables for lending an ear to our submission. Thank you very much.
Action Aid, thank you very much. You have saved a minute to our time, which is quite good. And also just to mention, when I looked at the areas of your operations, you mentioned Nalolo, and I forgot to indicate that we have, in fact, one of member of parliament for Nalolo, Honorable Imanga Munyima, who is participating also virtually. So I think you should be happy to hear that. Now, just maybe as you comment, as I allow the members to ask questions, my interest basically is on the issues of the water and the sanitation. And you see these huge numbers of boreholes being punched. And one of the reasons for that is the CDF, where communities, and I want to believe even the Honorable Member of Parliament for Nalolo also, did provide for some boreholes in his constituency. But I think the challenge which I see with this issue of boreholes is to the effect that from where I stand, when a bore is done, say from the point of the CDF and commissioned, then now it is up to the, if it's a village, that community to take care of that facility, the bore. They even have a committee where there's a treasurer. If they are paying, they're supposed to pay. If it's a two-kwacha, if each household pay per month, so that in an event of the breakdown, or maybe they want to replace a pipe, for example, then they use that fund. But I think, I don't know from other honorable members, the challenge that we are seeing is that even when you do that, the community basically are failing to maintain their own equipment, and it also comes maybe to honorable members. They will call a honorable member of parliament. We're asking for money to buy maybe two galvanized pipes, so that we work on that. So you find again, I look at your vision where it says every person should enjoy the right to a life of dignity, and without water you can't have dignity. So maybe as you maybe respond to the questions from our members, you may want to just to comment, especially on that aspect. I'm knowing that you work in these areas. How can you address that issue, where again you find you give a service? I know in town, in terms of sanitation, piped water, you have indicated, you're giving numbers there. Percentages are high in terms of accessibility to water, but we do pay for it. You don't pay, you see them coming, they switch off your tap, and then but in the village it's really something which is difficult. You want to provide, but again there's that failure to pay. So you may want to comment on that one. Honorable members, any questions? Any questions? Okay, Honorable Sawakai. Your mic?
Understand, make I'm allergic to a mic. Yeah, just educate me. When you say good sanitation in rural areas, what does it constitute? Good sanitation in Mwinilunga or in rural Kachama, what does it constitute?
Okay, any other questions, honorable members? Okay, maybe you can respond to that one and comment on the other one I raised. Now that's when I'm seeing hands. Honorable Mungandu, so that we take those.
Action Aid. For me, I want to find out from you, because we are reviewing the 8th National Development Plan. Do you think the parameters as set in your area of jurisdiction have an implementable plan by the government? Do you think there was an implementation plan in place, against which maybe benchmarking can be done in your analysis? If, if the answer is yes, are the results that you have presented in reference to that implementation plan that have been benchmarked?
Okay.
I hope my question is clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you can respond to those.
Okay, talking about good sanitation in the rural areas. So basically, like we mentioned, we want people to live a life of dignity. So we want the rural communities to have access to clean water. So that means when we say access to clean water, that means the vicinity where they access the water is nearby to their home, so that we reduce on their care work for women. And then when it comes to sanitation facilities such as toilets, clean toilets, we want to reduce on the number of open defecation. So because that really brings about diseases such as cholera. We had issues of cholera in Chipata. So that comes about because of poor sanitation. So if you have access to sanitation facilities, that means there's good sanitation in the rural areas. And then coming up to the issues of the committees failing to fix the boreholes. Yeah, we do understand that there are wash committees in the communities that are formed. So basically, they are more in charge of taking care of the water pumps. Remember, there was a target that was set to have 10 SOMAP shops equipped, which was not met, meaning that, again, access to equipment that they can use to fix the boreholes is not really there because the SOMAP shops are not really enough. And then we also talked about making sure that there's an enabling environment to ensure that people invest in those shops as well. So that can also include lifting taxes on hand pumps or reducing taxes so that they can be cheaper for the communities to have access to those. And then we are sure that the council trains the communities in terms of wash and how to fix the boreholes. But there's also an important aspect of making sure that the community feels part of that borehole. So some sort of community contribution will give them an incentive to want to fix their boreholes. So we can look at those aspects and can help in improving water access in rural areas. So speaking to the implementation plan, to answer the Honorable, I think the implementation plan was only launched, I think it should be this month, if it's not last month. So basically, we are reviewing the implementation of the National Development Plan, which had no implementation plan. So these are interim or just statistics that were in the National Development Plan, but without an implementation plan. So it's very difficult actually to judge or to analyze it without having the correct parameters, because it was only launched this month.
Okay. Any questions, honorable members? Okay. Actually, this is where we come to the end of our submission. It was quite straightforward and to the point. But it's still very good to put to the face the people who are behind this, and also from the viewpoint of the questions that which were raised. So in terms of the provisions, Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia, in terms of the immunity that which was given to you earlier on, also we end here. Do enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Continue watching Parliament TV, a station that is dedicated to bring Parliament closer to you. Continue watching Parliament TV, a station that is dedicated to bring Parliament closer to you.